This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Gary Lane. Today is Tuesday, January 27th. As the Middle East braces for war with Iran, a war in Syria is raging. And in Israel, the body of the last Israeli hostage was finally recovered, a day before the world marks Holocaust Remembrance Day. CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more on our top story from Jerusalem.
Israeli troops located the body of the last hostage, Ron Gvili, in a Gaza cemetery and returned it to Israel on Monday after 843 days in captivity. It marks the first time since 2014 that there are no Israeli hostages in Gaza. Gvili, a police officer, was on leave on October 7th with an injured shoulder. He went out to fight anyway and died defending Kibbutz Alumim. His body was kidnapped into Gaza. Israeli President Isaac Herzog released a short video showing he and his wife removing their yellow pins, the national symbol of the hostages held in Gaza.
An entire nation is breathing an enormous sigh of relief tonight, as all our hearts are with Ran's family, especially his parents, Talik and Itzik, who fought heroically and with remarkable courage to bring their son home.
His family thanked the IDF, the police, the government, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the people of Israel for standing with them.
We want to thank to President Trump, Witkoff, Kushner, and all the people behind the scenes.
In Northeast Syria, tensions are high as a longtime U.S. military ally is under assault, despite a ceasefire agreement between President Ahmad al-Shara, also known as al-Juliani's military, and the Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. Fighting is breaking out across the region. Chuck Holton is in the city of Qamishli and says many are fleeing the surrounding area.
It's early morning here in the northern Syrian city of Qamishli. This is a city that's been under the control of the Syrian Democratic Forces, or the Kurds, for more than 10 years. But now, this city of 180,000 people has another 200,000 people who have shown up here as refugees from the surrounding area. That's because al-Jilani's forces are trying to push the SDF and the Kurds out of this region altogether. And so they have been encircling the city with their forces, even though there's supposed to be a ceasefire. We heard fighting all night last night, and that is creating a huge humanitarian crisis here in Qamishli.
One Kurdish resident of Qamishli said this is the most challenging time they've faced since the fight against ISIS in 2011. He fears it could turn into a regional catastrophe.
Because this is not anymore about, two parties who are in conflict now. This is more likely about, ethnic groups that are getting into a dispute and a conflict. And this is the worst nightmare.
All this as the international community marks Holocaust Remembrance Day. In Jerusalem, Prime Minister Netanyahu told a conference that antisemitism is spreading most on social media.
This is the new battlefield, and this is where we must counter with our own weapons. We're late in the game, but we will win this battle too, as we won on the battlefield.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell is with us now. Chris, now that all the hostages are returned, what are the next steps in the peace deal? What are the challenges?
Well, there's a lot of challenges, Gary. I would say first to echo what the president said, that Israel really can breathe a sigh of relief now that all the hostages have been home. First time in 10 years, and certainly all the ones that came from October 7th. The big challenge, I think, right now is disarming Hamas. That was one of the main goals of the war when this all began on October 7th. And I think that is the main challenge right now. It seems like a lot of the nations, they want to go to phase 2. And there's a concern here, Gary, that some of the nations that are part of the Board of Peace, some of them actually on the Gaza Executive Board, and that would be Qatar and Turkey, would sort of soften the blow to Hamas and have a way that they could actually survive. That's a major concern here. They don't want Turkey involved. They don't want Qatar boots on the ground. So I think that's a big challenge right here, going after phase 1 of this peace deal onto phase 2.
Chris, Chuck Holden's reporting on the threat to the Kurds in the northeast of Syria. You and I have spent a lot of time with the Kurds over the years, so what should Americans know about the Kurds and their relations with the United States?
Well, first of all, Gary, I think that they should know that the Kurds have been one of the greatest allies in the war against terror, against Islamic terror, and specifically against ISIS. There are about 11,000 Kurds who died fighting ISIS when it was rampaging through Iraq and Syria. So I think people need to know they're a great ally. And right now, a lot of people believe that somehow there's been a deal made where the al-Shura government of Syria has been able to go in and take over what is called Northeast Syria, an autonomous area that really had been a free democratic area. It's just a remarkable phenomenon there in the heart of the Middle East. And now it's under peril. The al-Shura government and the Syrian army, which is made up of many jihadists, is really taking over this area and threatening many of the Kurds. We've seen atrocities, we've seen torture and killing. We've seen humiliation of many of the Kurdish soldiers, even the women. So it's a very, very difficult, desperate situation for them. And I think a lot of people need to pray for the Kurds and all the people in that region, because it's really been a beacon of democracy and freedom, even religious freedom, in the heart of the Middle East.
Chris, you're attending an anti-Semitism conference in Jerusalem. What's the main takeaway from the gathering?
Yeah, I see that Julie in her story had a soundbite from Prime Minister Netanyahu. I'm at the same conference. It's a day-long conference. The biggest takeaway, I think, is that the dangers of anti-Semitism and how much it has grown in social media. I think that's one of the main examples and one of the main concerns right now of the of anti-Semitism. We've heard from the president earlier this morning, President Isaac Herzog. We've heard from the Prime Minister of Albania, and they've had a couple of panels here. But the growth of anti-Semitism, Gary, I think is a huge concern. And they're also saying that, you know, Israel has been fighting a 7-front war against all of its enemies surrounding here. The 8th front is the battle for truth, and that's what they call this conference, Generation of Truth. And so they feel like this is the existential battle for the legitimacy of the Jewish people and the Jewish state, and a battle no less important, perhaps, Gary, than what many of the soldiers have been fighting on the battlefield.
Yes, and on this Holocaust Remembrance Day, it's still a shame that 81 years later, people still deny the Holocaust. So what do you have on today's Jerusalem Dateline, Chris? We've got about 45 seconds.
Yeah, well, because of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we have a story of Walter Bingham. He's a good friend of ours. He's 102 years old, believe it or not, and he's set the Guinness World Book of Records as the oldest working journalist. He survived the Holocaust, so we have a story on him. We have also an update on something called the truth about some of the influencers that have been anti-Semitic coming against Israel. We have a statement about that, and also a story about the Dead Sea Scrolls that are actually, some of them are in Washington, D.C. right now, and a feature on that, just once again proving the connection between the Jewish people and the land of Israel.
Okay, our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, thanks for your insights. We look forward to hearing from you again in the days ahead. And you can see the latest Jerusalem Dateline at 8 p.m. Eastern on the CBN News Channel. You can also watch on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Back here at home, protests continue in and around Minneapolis after the latest deadly shooting by federal officers there. This as President Trump and Governor Walz are talking, and the nation's border czar makes his way to Minnesota due to the growing criticism over immigration enforcement tactics. CBN's Wendy Griffith has more.
President Trump is shaking up the leadership of immigration enforcement operations in Minnesota after the fatal shooting of 37-year-old Alex Preddy. At least 29 Republican members of Congress are now demanding a full investigation. The Department of Homeland Security now reviewing body camera video showing multiple angles of the shooting. The president sending in his border czar, Tom Homan, who he says will, quote, report directly to me. And Gregory Bovino, the top Border Patrol agent in charge, reportedly is leaving as soon as today.
Mr. Homan is the point person for cooperating with state and local authorities and corresponding with them, again, to achieve this level of cooperation to subdue the chaos on the streets of Minneapolis.
The president now facing growing scrutiny within his own party over the administration's handling of the immigration crackdown and response to 2 fatal shootings.
Immediately when an incident like this happens, they come out guns blazing that we took out a violent terrorist, hooray. Escalating the rhetoric doesn't help, and it actually loses credibility.
Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott says the White House needs to recalibrate immigration enforcement tactics
to make sure that they are going to be able to remove these people without causing all the kinds of problems and fighting in communities that they are experiencing right now.
The White House Monday distancing itself from comments Saturday by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who accused Preddy of domestic terrorism. But Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also pointing the finger at Minnesota's Democratic leaders.
This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota.
Also Monday, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz called President Trump to discuss how they can work together to quell the weeks-long unrest. The president posting on social media that he and Walz seem to be on, quote, a similar wavelength. The situation could have national implications. Democrats vowing to oppose a package that includes funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which could result in a partial government shutdown at the end of the week. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Coming up, it's Holocaust Remembrance Day. We show you how one rabbi saved tens of thousands of Jews. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch. On this day in 1945, Soviet troops liberated the Nazi death camp in Auschwitz, where more than 1 million people died, most of them Jews. January 27th is now observed worldwide as Holocaust Remembrance Day. Now, a new book about the Holocaust tells the inspiring story of a rabbi in Bulgaria who saved tens of thousands of Jews. CBN's Raj Nair brings us that story.
During the Holocaust, as Hitler's final solution systematically exterminated Europe's Jewish population, a rabbi named Daniel Zion, who had become a messianic follower of Yeshua, became instrumental in rescuing tens of thousands of Jewish lives.
They went to see the king himself, and the Rabbi Daniel Zion delivered a letter to the king and say, if you hand the 50,000 Jews to Hitler, one day you're going to stand before God, and their blood will be on your hands, and this is how you'll be remembered. So God used them to bring the fear of God upon the government of Bulgaria and the king of Bulgaria.
This piece of little-known history is now told in the book Legacy of Hope, written by Avi Mizrahi. Now, he and his daughter Devorah are now seeing this story result in something truly miraculous inside Israel.
And through the story, you can actually share the gospel. Because here's a hero for our people who did something tremendous for our people, saving 50,000 Jewish people. That's not a small thing. Not only was he Jewish, but he also believed in the Messiah, Yeshua. So it's a story that Jewish people can get a hold of and Israelis can get a hold of.
This is a wonderful opportunity to sharing with our Israeli friends that you can be Jewish, you can even be a rabbi, Orthodox rabbi, and you can believe in Yeshua because he's the only hope. And when we Messianic Jews and Christian believers come together, we can stand together as the one human against the evil and overcome evil in such a time it is.
As bright as this evangelistic story has become in Israel, it's also set against the backdrop of a worldwide resurgence of anti-Semitism. From Manchester to Washington to Sydney's Bondi Beach, violence and hatred against the Jewish people are rampant. CBN News asked Devorah what Christian believers can learn from the legacy of hope.
Through it all, they never gave up, and they did not stay silent. For them, they were vocal. They prayed. They gathered Jews into their homes, into their churches. They were vocally and very much active in saving of the Jews of Bulgaria. Who knows if by us being active, maybe by our actions, they will see their Messiah and the veil will be removed. And I said, it's actually now that we need to stand for the Jewish people when it's hard and when we're persecuted and when they're persecuted, even to risk our lives, because we know that the Jewish people are part of God's bigger plan. And if we want to be part of God's plan, we have to be part of this too.
Raj Nair for CBN News.
Still ahead, one doctor shares her lessons and reflections on her cancer journey. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch. About 1 in 5 Americans faces a cancer diagnosis at some point in their lives. On this week's Healthy Living show, oncologist Dr. Hwang, author of From Both Sides of the Curtain, discusses what she learned about the disease after going through her own journey with breast cancer.
When I first got diagnosed, as devastating as it was, part of me kind of thought, you know, if I'm going to get a cancer, I guess this would be the one to get. After all, I've guided thousands of women down this path. I know the nuances to the treatment. I know all the doctors. So, you know, because of this, I kind of thought I could get through treatment easily and then just kind of get back to life as I knew it. And when I was recovering from my surgery at home, I quickly realized that life as I knew it was gone. And it's a very sobering realization, because when you get this diagnosis, it really changes you down to the core. And the challenging thing is the world around you keeps going. You know, your friends are the same, your family's the same, and they're all there to support you, but you are just fundamentally a different person after this diagnosis. And I've heard patients tell me this when they come in and they meet me and they say, you know, I just feel different. I'm off. I feel lonely. I feel very isolated. And I wanted to write this book because if I, with 15 years of experience treating breast cancer, felt lonely and isolated, then certainly someone without all my knowledge, it's totally understandable for, you know, the average patient to also feel that way. So I wanted to share my story so that patients out there know that they're not alone.
You know, one thing that's different, one of the many things that's different about your experience as to the average patient's experience, if there is such a thing, is that as soon as you got your mammogram results, you knew that you had breast cancer. A lot of us have to wait until we talk to the radiologist or some other doctor for them to interpret it, but you knew right away. But what surprised you about your reaction to those mammogram results?
You know, until you are that person, you know, honestly, when I went in for that mammogram, I literally had my day scheduled. Like, I was going to go for the mammogram at 8. You know, I had to get my car repaired at 9. I had to go pick up my kids at 1. Like, I had my whole day scheduled. And I guess what surprised me about the mammogram results is even though my whole world literally turned upside down that instant, my brain kept thinking, okay, you have a schedule today. You got to get your car repaired. You got to get the kids, you know. And I think it was just a total disconnect between the news and then like the reality of what I had to do that day. So when I reflect back, you know, and I tell people, like, because a lot of people ask me, what were you thinking when you got that news? And I really was thinking, I really have to go get my car repaired. And it was just it was a weird way that I processed it.
That sounds to me like denial or or shock.
Yes. I you know, now looking back, that is probably the more appropriate word, but it was certainly a funny thing to think about when you are getting a life-changing diagnosis.
So now you became the patient. And what was that like for you when you used to be the caregiver and all of your colleagues and associates at the hospital and within the medical community are now your caregivers? They say that doctors are notoriously bad patients. What was it like for you to be the patient?
Yes, I will openly admit I was a horrible patient. And, part of it was really because exactly what you just said, you're to some degree, you're still in denial. Even when you're going in for treatment, you're in denial. It's like, this is not happening to me. So I wasn't intentionally trying to be a bad patient and not listening to my doctors. It was just that, I was like, physically, I was like, I want to go for a walk. I'm fine. I know I just had surgery, but I can still go for a walk, even though I wasn't supposed to go for a walk.
You can learn more about both sides of the curtain on this week's edition of Healthy Living. And today it's on the CBN News Channel at 2:30 and 8:30 Eastern. You can also see it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Stay with us. More CBN News Watch right after this. Welcome back to CBN News Watch. Children in Memphis turned the recent winter storm into some fun. Although the area didn't get a significant amount of ice, the kids enjoyed a day off to play and build a makeshift igloo using ice blocks accumulated on driveways. Meanwhile, warming centers were set up in Memphis to help residents during the below freezing temperatures. Well, that's it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news program on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.